Min's shocking victory in court left many people either surprised or vindicated because they believe that this means she has won the feud between her and HYBE. However, I am here to tell you guys why this is just the calm in the eye of the storm and why Min Hee-Jin's victory might be part of HYBE's master plan. Before we get started on this video, I also have a challenge for you guys. I want you to leave a comment with your original reaction to the injunction results, and then after watching this video I want you to update that comment and let me know if your opinion has changed or how you're feeling. Anyway, let's go. Hi guys, Han here, and whether you were for or against Min Hee-Jin or for or against HYBE, I think everybody was quite shocked by the ruling that the court made last week. And I also think a lot of people are misunderstanding what this ruling truly means for this situation. For those who support Min Hee-Jin, they obviously see this as her victory, proof of her innocence and her overwhelming defeat of HYBE, vindication and all that you will. However, for those who don't support her or those who support HYBE, they were very surprised because a lot of people felt like the writing was on the wall and how could she possibly get away with this? But personally, I think both sides are a bit misinformed about what this injunction was actually for and what this court ruling means, and also what is yet to come, because if you see this as the end of the situation, you could not be more wrong. So today we're going to talk about what the injunction ruling actually means and why the court made that ruling, what I think is going to happen moving forward, and most importantly, why HYBE might have planned for all of this. Okay, so starting off with the most important part of this, Min Hee-Jin's court win. I do want to say that personally, as I mentioned, I was disappointed but not surprised. I expected there was around a 70% chance that HYBE would win. And I do want to put this out as a disclaimer, I am not pro-HYBE, but I am definitely anti-Min Hee-Jin. So I think there's a very important distinction that needs to be made there. I think she is a bad person. I think her relationship with NewJeans is completely inappropriate. I think she gives herself way too much credit for the contribution she actually made in their success. And I do think she's guilty of the management takeover accusations that HYBE had levied against her. So with all that being said, I was still hoping that HYBE would win this injunction because I thought it'd be a way to fast track the situation. That being said, the reason I wasn't surprised is because if we look at the media play that Min Hee-Jin has been carrying out, she's been very effective in winning the sympathies and support of the Korean public, which I'm not sure if I mentioned this in my last video, but in cases like this where everybody is watching, the public opinion really matters, because if a judge rules against what the public wants, it could be the end of their career. That being said, in the days leading up to the injunction decision, which was May 30th, there were a lot of leaked Kakao Talk messages about Min Hee-Jin talking badly about NewJeans or Min Hee-Jin talking about taking over HYBE long before ILET's debut, and that did start to make people waver. Also, the more Min Hee-Jin presented herself in public, the more people started to find contradictions and cracks in some of her accusations against HYBE. So with all of that being said, I assumed HYBE would have gone into this court case with their cards very close to their chest, because if we look at the public statements they released before this, HYBE did not lean into the media play the same way that Min Hee-Jin did. They went about it in a very, what I would consider, professional way, and they only really answered the accusations she made against them that were directly related to her position. So things like not promoting NewJeans or neglecting NewJeans and things like that. They talked a lot of those things, but they didn't really answer any of the personal accusations she made against like Bang PD or Park Ji-won, which I think is a very professional way to handle the situation, but unfortunately that doesn't really win the sympathies of the public. So I was hoping the reason they were doing that is that they would go into the court with evidence that hadn't yet been shared, and they would have something groundbreaking that would overturn the court's opinion, or that couldn't be denied. However, as I keep saying, I do think Min Hee-Jin is not only an evil genius, but also very lucky. And I know a lot of you guys don't like me saying she's an evil genius. You don't think she's a genius, you think she's narcissistic, but I agree with. But I'm looking at this from a marketer's perspective, and I would say all of her media play is a very good example of very effective self-branding. So that's just me. But anyway, as I'm sure you all know, from the beginning of the situation, Min Hee-Jin has been very aggressive in her public marketing and the way she's talked about this situation, as well as encouraging lots of tangents by bringing up irrelevant news or more scandalous stories to flood the media, to take the attention away from what she's actually been accused of. And I think to some degree, while a lot of international fans did see through this, and a lot of domestic fans too, a lot of people did lose sight of what the actual main argument was here. And I think that's why a lot of people were quite surprised by the results of the injunction, because the injunction's purpose was to determine, had Min Hee-Jin failed to meet her duties as the CEO of ADOR. And a lot of people saw it as an evaluation of whether HYBE's accusations against Min Hee-Jin were legitimate or not, which is not what the court was there to check. And I think this is made very evident by the official statement. I don't have it in front of me, but I'll put it on the screen for you guys. The court mentioned that they did agree with HYBE's accusations that Min Hee-Jin had been planning a management takeover. The important thing was that she had not planned to do anything that would be harmful to ADOR. And unfortunately, because she's the CEO of ADOR, that is where her loyalty lies. And even if she doesn't like HYBE and has some personal, like, deep-seated hatred for HYBE, that doesn't count as justification for her to be fired if she hasn't actually failed to meet her responsibilities. And her responsibilities are to ADOR, not to HYBE. That is essentially the reasoning behind the judge's decision, which unfortunately is very sound reasoning. It's very clear that she doesn't want to harm ADOR because in the long run she's planning to keep ADOR, or at least to keep ADOR's assets, which is NewJeans, which means she can't harm the company now because they need to keep their value, right? But for those of us who were hoping that she would be kicked out, it was a very disappointing ruling, and it seems like HYBE went at it from the wrong angle, which is why they failed to prove that she was not effective in her role as the CEO of ADOR, rather than she's not effective in her role as a HYBE employee. That was essentially the big difference here. I also think Min Hee-Jin kind of went into this knowing she would likely win this case, because she kind of forced this court date. By not attending the HYBE Extraordinary General Meeting, where the board members of HYBE would have made a decision to dismiss her, she forced them to then call a secondary extraordinary meeting with the ADOR board members, and that gave her time to file this injunction, which, probably advised by her lawyers, she knew she had a very high likelihood of winning. Because I think also the fact that this is the injunction for the ADOR board meeting rather than the HYBE board meeting gives even more leverage to her and even more justification for the judge's ruling, because that's where she was going to be dismissed, at the ADOR meeting, not the HYBE meeting. One other thing that a lot of people are overlooking, but is also very important for the situation, is that Min Hee-Jin's argument for this injunction was that without her there would be significant damage to ADOR and to NewJeans. And I think HYBE also didn't focus enough on this point when they were making their arguments. They were kind of giving a delayed response to some of the things she'd already said about, like, oh, I'm the mother of NewJeans, and then they showed the cacao of her bad-mouthing them and things like that. They didn't actually give enough evidence on the fact that they would be able to maintain NewJeans' career even without Min Hee-Jin's input. I think one of the great examples of this is the whole taking a year and a half to find a Grammy-worthy producer, which then led to the parents of NewJeans understanding that for a year and a half NewJeans would not be active until a Grammy-level producer was found, which I personally don't think is what HYBE was trying to say, but that's the way it was understood by the parents and, by extension, a lot of the public. These kind of things unfortunately play against HYBE because it creates this image that without Min Hee-Jin, HYBE will neglect NewJeans, which also lends itself to the argument she was making at the very beginning. So I think HYBE had a burden of proof to show that they had plans and they had schedules and they had the means to support NewJeans without Min Hee-Jin, and they didn't spend enough time developing and presenting that to the court. They focused more on proving why Min Hee-Jin was bad and not how they would be able to function without her. So I think all these things added together led themselves to Min Hee-Jin's support for this case, because it further proved the point that she is integral to ADOR, and as we've already mentioned, the injunction was never about whether she was trying to harm HYBE or not, so it's irrelevant. Now that we've got an understanding of why Min Hee-Jin won, we need to talk about why this isn't the end. And I think the most important thing about this whole injunction that everybody is forgetting is that it's temporary. This is by no means the end of the story, and the injunction can be overturned in one of three situations. 1, HYBE provides additional evidence to prove that they can manage NewJeans without her, and therefore she's no longer essential to ADOR. 2, HYBE can prove that she actually did something against ADOR's best interest. Or 3, HYBE can prove that she broke the terms of her employment contract by committing a crime. And I think this third one is actually what is going to be the focus of HYBE's plan moving forward. And I think it's evidenced by the B-Lift defamation suit that's already been filed against Min Hee-Jin. I do want to put this out there. It doesn't actually matter whether what Min Hee-Jin said is true or not. In Korea, it is possible to be sued for defamation even if what you said is found to be true. Not only that, there's also the ongoing investigation into the potential leaking of proprietary information about other artists under HYBE or HYBE's inner workings as a business. Although I do think while they say they have evidence for this, that will be a much more difficult case against her, simply because knowing how things usually go in Korea and also based on the statements from her vice president so far, it seems like Min Hee-Jin often instructs other people to do things, particularly her two vice presidents, or ex-vice presidents shall we say, and therefore it might be harder to prove that those instructions to do those actions actually came from Min Hee-Jin, and it may not even be illegal technically for her to tell them to do it because she didn't actually do the act. I'm not sure about that side of Korean law, so I can't tell you. But personally, I believe the defamation case is going to be the more likely avenue, as I think it will be a little bit easier to prove. And if she's found guilty, HYBE will then have grounds to have the injunction cancelled and terminate her. Okay, so now we're going to get into the answer to the question that I know is burning in all of your minds. Why is this part of HYBE's plan? Well, in my personal opinion, I think HYBE almost intentionally threw this court case. And I think it was a very clever play because it's something you couldn't have seen coming until after the results already came out. As we've already seen, they'd already started taking other legal action against Min Hee-Jin before the injunction results were released. And I think they did that because they already knew they were going to lose, because they haven't been spending their time working on the injunction, they've been spending their time working on the other cases against her. Not only that, I think HYBE used this injunction as an opportunity to kind of dampen Min Hee-Jin's perception in the public eye by releasing those Kakao talks, which ultimately, as we mentioned, aren't actually pertinent to the case. Why were they submitted in the first place? Because they wanted them to be leaked. HYBE are trying to break down the public support that people have for Min Hee-Jin by revealing her true character, whilst also playing the long game with her legally. And I think this is proven further by the statements that she gave after the court was ruled. I haven't watched her full conference yet, but I know that she's mentioned that she's trying to reconciliate with HYBE and she's hoping that they can all let bygones be bygones and move past this. I think she's doing that because she knows that the case against her is strong and that the public support for her is starting to wane. So she's trying to save face by being the bigger person now that she's got this victory to ride high on. I think she's also still playing into that image of like a regular working woman rather than the millionaire CEO that she is by dressing down, even though she of course has the money to come in the full black suit and dress like, you know, the typical image of what a CEO is, right? Not only that, I do think HYBE have also already taken some extra precautions in the off chance that they do lose the other legal proceedings that they currently have against her. And that would obviously be by firing the two VPs. And this is a little bit off topic, but I found it so funny that Min Hee-Jin tried to say that HYBE firing the two VPs was in direct violation of her injunction, because one, if she really cared about them, she would have had them join her injunction as a joint injunction, or they would have filed their separate injunctions. And two, she did not mention her VPs at all until after the results had come out. I actually think she didn't include the VPs in the first place because, as I mentioned, typically it's the boss who tells the underlings to go and do things. So that probably could have weakened her case because there would probably be stronger evidence that they have actually done something, whereas she herself has claimed innocence because she hasn't herself personally done anything. So I do think that was very funny and very intentional, but I digress. Back to the main topic. HYBE, having fired her two VPs and instated 3 of their own VPs, now means that of course she's outnumbered in every decision. This is HYBE essentially not only keeping Min Hee-Jin on a short leash in terms of what she can do within HYBE, but it's also keeping surveillance on what she does outside. Of course, there's been accusations of her meeting investors and trying to find people to help her buy enough stocks to make ADOR independent. And of course, she would need funding if she was to go and start her own company, if she was just simply to take New Jeans out of HYBE. And I think she knows that the chances of either of those things happening with all this publicity, all this bad publicity, now is very low, which is part of the reason she's also trying to save face by reconciling with HYBE, because she knows that if she does get kicked out now, her original plan is not going to work the way she wanted it to. Because if she then goes and does all the things HYBE have accused her of, it only proves that HYBE was right from the very beginning. I think she knows she's cooked, and I think she also is aware that right now, at least for the short term, until all of this blows over into the distant memory, staying in HYBE is definitely the best thing she can do for her career and for her future and for her original plan. The irony of all of this is that she claimed to be a slave at the beginning, and now with her 3 baby sisters, she essentially is, because she has no free reign over anything. And I think it just goes to show that's what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you, because she was given so much creative freedom at the beginning and financial freedom, and she threw that all away because she wanted to have something of her own rather than something that belongs to HYBE. That being said, even if Min Hee-Jin does end up staying in HYBE long term, the reality is she can only stay as late as November 2026, because that's when her contract ends, and I personally will be hard pressed to believe that HYBE are going to extend her contract. The real question is not, will Min Hee-Jin be kicked out of HYBE? The real question is when and how. And more importantly, what will happen after she's kicked out? Will New Jeans follow her, or will they stay loyal to HYBE? And I think a great indicator of that is the fact that New Jeans' parents have finally got their own legal representation, which I think you'll understand the importance of if you check out my last video about why the parents of New Jeans support Min Hee-Jin. Anyway, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with me that this is all part of HYBE's plan? Or do you think Min Hee-Jin has truly won this situation? Leave a comment down below, because it would really help my video in the algorithm, and I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, this has been Han from the Haniverse. Thanks for stopping by!